פגשתי את מינדי וייזל בוושינגטון כששימשתי נספחת לענייני נשים בשגרירות. בת לניצולי שואה שעשתה קריירה כציירת שהפכה טרגדיה ליופי ואומנות עכשווית. זאת מינדי. מינדי דתייה, שומרת שבת, שומרת מסורת ואוהבת ישראל וחולמת על הארץ. מינדי כל הזמן מדברת על לעשות עלייה לארץ, ואני מסבירה לה שלחיות בישראל זה עולה הרבה כסף.
I have a studio from my dreams. I mean, it's a fantasy, you know. I walk down the street in Baca and I think I can't possibly be in Israel. I can't possibly be in Israel. And then well, my whole life I wanted to really be in Israel, and I've done so many fellowships here and teaching at Haifa University, and constantly, you know, you were with me all these years. At Mishkanot used to bring me food. Since I'm here in Israel, I don't know if the palette has changed. The colors are still the same colors, but I think I can experience painting here in a very different way. I cry a lot more here. I feel much more emotionally open. I don't feel as guarded. I still start every painting by writing, but I feel like Israel's my muse. Israel has given me an energy. Working in Jerusalem is remarkable. For me, it's the most interesting experience of my life. So when you make oil on canvas, it's almost like each one is running a marathon. Canvas takes really energy and time and patience. You have to wait for the oil to dry. You have to wait for it to be really what you're feeling, what you're saying, so you can look at it and say, okay, this feels honest. This was done to Rami Kleinstein music, and it's called Forever Young. The sky was blue, and I had just been in the States, and I came back to Israel, and I was so happy to be back in Israel. So this is a Rami Kleinstein oil on canvas. To have a garden in Jerusalem, it's amazing, and my landlord takes very good care of the plants, so I try also. But I'm so blessed to have this studio. It's really something very unusual. When my mother used to like something, she always used to say to me, it's really something. So this is really something. I'm crazy about books, so I have books and books. I live to buy paints and to buy books. More than food, it's my food. My mother used to say I was a tzigana in Hungarian. And everything here is made by old people. Everything is from Israeli arts and crafts. I wanted to surround myself with the energy of it.
מינדי נוסעת לקורני ולומדת שם כמה חודשים טובים איך לטפל בזכוכית, והיא מצליחה ברמה כזאת שהיא עושה תערוכה של עבודות בזכוכית, מוכרת את כל התערוכה, כמעט את כל התערוכה, ויש הרבה כסף, ועם הכסף היא מגשימה חלום והיא קונה דירה קטנה בירושלים.
Most people have a lot of pictures of their childhood. I have 4 pictures. The first was when I was born. I was one of the first 50 children born in Bergen-Belsen, January 7th, 1947. Picture number 2 is my mother and father in Bergen-Belsen waiting for papers to go to Israel, but they actually couldn't go because they had a child and they were married and they were only taking single people that year. I was one of the first children born to thousands of survivors living in a displaced persons camp. My mother and father said, I never sat just with them. I was on everybody's lap. You know, so I think it's really an early experience of being filled with a lot of love, really, and a lot of happiness, and also sadness. And the third picture I have is I'm 2 years old in Bergen-Belsen. My father had an amazing story. 9 out of 11 children survived the Shoah. And this was his brother's wedding. The only picture I have of my grandmother, my mother's mother, is who I'm named after. She had come to America, but she wanted to go back to Europe. She didn't want to be an American. Her sister said, don't go, you're not gonna make it out from Europe. And she was killed. She was 48 years old, my mother's mother. My mother was always so sad. And I think I appreciated every happy moment we had in our life. Look how elegant they were. 7 years earlier, they had just survived Auschwitz. And look at this elegant picture. It's amazing, the human ability to survive and create a new life. What it means is that every single day is a miracle. And I say Moda Ani every single morning. And I always have flowers. And I believe in love and kindness. It's really my life. It's a nice apartment, yeah? I made all of this. I made this, I made that, I made the glass, everything. I was 12 years old and I found a suitcase that my parents brought from Europe, and in it was Yiddish letters that my father wrote, songs, letters, a journal. And I found a drawing that changed my life. I think this is why I'm an artist. My father came from a yeshiva background. He was dati, they were all Hasidim, and he never had a drawing lesson in his life. He didn't even know from a pencil and a paper to make a drawing. So I went to my father when I was 12 and I said, Tati, what is this? And he said he was so moved one morning in Bergen-Belsen, he was 20 years old, to take a pencil and make a picture of the sun coming up. But I was 12 years old and I saw this drawing and I couldn't believe how emotional it made me. When I saw this was the first seed, really the first seed inside myself that planted some idea that I could be an artist. When I started this, I was already working as a painter for a few years. I was trying to find what had meaning to me. And I don't think an artist has a choice what they do. It comes to them. And I was in a new studio. It was really in an old building. It was cold, and I'm thinking, what should I paint? And I just wanted to paint my father's number. That's it. I didn't know what direction it was going to go. And I painted for a year. When I finished this body of work, this series with my father's number, I was offered an exhibition in Washington at the Jack Rasmussen Gallery. And Every painting sold, every art critic wrote about it, every curator, it was an amazing, like an explosion of recognition. You know, people, and they taught me that if I work from my heart, I'll be okay.
Mindy Weissel was born at the displaced persons camp at Bergen-Belsen, but her work is not about the tragedy of the Holocaust, it's about the passion of life, as is this major exhibition at the Krieger Museum here in Washington, D.C. In an intimate space in 3 separate bodies of work, beauty has survived 2 massive human tragedies, the Holocaust and the tsunami that hit Japan in 2011. Mindy Weissel paints feelings. She says you can change thoughts and ideas, but you can't change feelings. And these works of art are highly emotional.
Directly after doing the paintings with my father's number, where I spent a year in such darkness, I ended up with this explosion of color. But really, it was like somebody had been on a desert and then found water, and all I did was mix color and paint. And the bigger the painting, the better it was. I couldn't work big enough. My father told me about what happened in Auschwitz. My mother would not talk about Auschwitz. My mother was very determined to tell me about the beautiful life she had before the war. So my mother was on a boat for 2.5 weeks coming to America, and this represented what she felt was her home before the war. And she taught me, you know, I'm the only daughter to this woman who really, no other women survived in her family. She was the only woman. So you go, you have the daughter, you want that daughter to know what was important to you. She showed me these kinds of things of beauty. My mother talked to me about her sadness, how she missed her mother, missed her sisters, their children. My mother really was the only one that was left. Here, do you see the Hebrew writing? And it spells out in Yiddish the Shensta. The Shensta in Yiddish means the prettiest. And everything had to be the prettiest for my mother, the most beautiful. My mother and father never wanted to go back to Germany, to Hungary. The United States State Department asked me to be a cultural ambassador to Germany for 2.5 weeks. It was really a very victorious feeling. Can you imagine the mayor of Dachau, my mother was in Dachau, the mayor of Dachau welcoming me to Germany. Talk about feeling victorious. They didn't kill us. And then they made a lunch in Dachau, and a Nazi's son who's an artist. These 4 people were artists who stayed in Dachau as a symbol that Germans should never forget, and they live with their own guilt. And then I spoke at the University of Kiel, and there were posters all over the university and the streets of Kiel with this announcement. And then the newspaper, the main newspaper in Germany, did a very long article on my visit. They live with a lot of shame. One of the first German people I met, when they met me, they cried. They couldn't even talk. He was interviewed by the Los Angeles Jewish Forward, and they said, "How do you feel that your daughter went back to Germany?" And he said, "I'm very proud of her, that she wasn't raised with hatred. What good would hatred do?" This one is called God's Tears. And it was raining in Jerusalem. It was really raining. And I was working actually with a lot of color. And then I started pouring this blues and blacks, and I just couldn't stop crying. And I don't cry easily. Holocaust survivor children really and truly don't cry easily. You're not in Auschwitz. You're not hungry. You're not starving. You have shoes. You have a bed. What are you crying about? But you know, everybody has their own emotional life. And I really felt it in this painting. You know how the Israel Museum came 3 times to my studio this year?
Yes.
Amitai Mendelson and Tanya Sarkovich, and they're so interested, and they presented all my work to a committee, and the committee unanimously decided that right now was not the time for me to have a painting exhibition because their calendar for 18 months doesn't include painting right now, my kind of painting. But unanimously the museum voted to acquire a work. And it's this work which, Dasi, it's the biggest work I ever did, the largest.
Oh my
it's
God.
huge. In America, it's 8 feet high and 6 feet wide. I looked at it for a week. I didn't have to make one more mark. It was finished. It was really She's so little. אני שמחה שבשבוע הבא אנחנו נפגשים בסטודיו שלי.
מצוין.
כן?
אבל אנחנו, את ואני,
ביחד?
משה ודני נפגשים.
כן.
מינדי ועסקה
נפגשו.
נפגש. פמינין, פלורל.
נפגשה.
נפגש. נפגשים.
כן.
נפגשות. נכון.
או נפגשות.
נכון.
אוקיי. כשהגעתי לארץ, אני שמחתי, כי אני בבית שלנו.
מעולה.
כן?
כי...
הארץ הבית שלנו, איך הם מדברים?
כי אני, אולי, that I feel, כי
אני מרגישה שאני בבית שלנו.
נכון. או בבית שלי.
בבית שלי, כן. לא קל להתרגל למצב, ל-situation שאין לי אותו.
יפה, אבל לא קל למי?
לי.
לא,
לי או אותי? לי.
לבדוק.
יסקה, את מיוחדת.
את מיוחדת.
את, יש לך חמלה. זה מילה חדשה, כן? אוקיי, לבדוק את it's to check.
למה זה קשה ללמוד את זה?
תלוי ביום, שאני לא עייפה, זה לא קל, לא קשה. שהיה לי ערב טוב, זה קל. How I miss you.
It amazes me every time.
We have here your installation from a close-up in
here.
the New Glass magazine. So I thought you would be pleased.
Of Neue Glass, I'm more than pleased. I'm so honored. First of all, this was the first exhibition in my whole life where I had a panel in Hebrew on a museum wall and a panel in English. Okay, so unfortunately, most people don't understand glass. They think it's just technique, and you have to have a neshama no matter what art you make. It's no paint, no paint. It's all made out of glass, of pieces of glass, powdered glass, broken glass, and you make layer by layer by layer. It gets fused, baked together, and then you have what feels to me as if it walked out of one of my paintings, but it's full of light. And the reason it's called crossover is because I crossed over on so many levels. I had just made Aliyah. I had just done from painting to glass. I mean, the whole thing is amazing. So here I am, a new Aliyah person, a new artist, and I have this sitting here. This is the best curated exhibition of 40 years of work, without any exaggeration. If it was a day that I had a lot of machshavot, a lot of crazy thoughts, I let it be in the glass. If it was a day that was very calm, like this turquoise one, that feels like the ocean, I let it be calm. Here's purple and then here's purple. Here's the purple. It's like a song. It's like a dance that goes up to the sky. It's already been up for 2 years, and the museum asked that it be extended another year. So now it will have been here. It might stay for a long time.
I was so thrilled when the work came up as it is.
It's amazing.
And I adore it, of course.
But I've written The Daughters of Absence, my book. My paintings are on all these books, Primo Levi's book. Then there's a lot of books that have interviews, painting of my mother's back, and they included my work in an Elie Wiesel story with my father's number. It's a piece called Ovens, and this piece is in the permanent collection at Yad Vashem. Can you see it? A3146. When my mother was dying, her doctor said to her, "Lily, let's dance." And I love that title. I said, that's such a great title, Lily, Let's Dance. And her name was Lily Deutsch, LD. So my mother died. I was thinking, how will I honor her with my art? And I went to Los Angeles where she lived, and I went through her closet and her clothes. And it hit me like a ton of bricks, really hit me. I'm going to make a series of paintings with my mother's dresses. So I went to a factory with her dresses, and I had them ground down into handmade paper. And this is one of the paintings that came out of this. You can see my mother's dress is here. And all of this is made out of fabrics from my mother's dresses, but you don't feel the fabric because it's in the paper. You only feel the paper, and in a few places are little bits of her dresses. And this one is in the permanent collection of the Israel Museum.
בוושינגטון היה להם בית עם 3 קומות ובריכת שחייה, ופה בית קטן, חמוד, עם מרפסת מוקפת פרחים. הציורים מקבלים תפנית אומנותית, משמעותית. לא עוד ציורי שואה. יש ציורים חדשים, עם אור, עם שחרור, עם ריחוף, עם צבעים, עם כחול של ישראל ושל ירושלים.
Look at this. It was a miracle. I applied for a fellowship to work in Israel. I was always looking for an excuse to be in Jerusalem.
Okay.
Forget Israel, just Jerusalem. To me, Israel is Jerusalem. And I was awarded this honor, this chut. I still can't believe it. In 1993, while my mother was dying, and I came anyway, she said, "You have to go, you have to, you have to." And I spent the entire summer here. And this was my room, and right over here, and this was my view. And I was so inspired, you can imagine, I was so inspired. I couldn't do big paintings because I would never finish, and it couldn't say it enough.
But today when you're in Jerusalem, the paintings are really big.
They're big, I have so much to say. That's a very good question. I have so much to say. I've lived a long time. Since 1993, I lost my mother. I became a grandmother. I married off 3 daughters. I made Aliyah. I live in Jerusalem. I've traveled halfway around the world. I have so much to say. And thank goodness here I have the energy and the light and my love of Jerusalem that inspires me every day. I was not young. I was 65 years old when I made Aliyah. But I had no choice.
Very brave.
חזרנו אל בורות המים, לשוק ולכיכר.
I spent 40 years back and forth in Israel. I taught at Haifa University in 1989. I had a fellowship at Mishkanot in 1993. I wrote books here. I lived here. I have my family here. For me, it was a dream. It wasn't easy. I gave up being close to my family. I have a father and a brother in California, and nieces and nephews and sister-in-law, and I have 2 daughters and son-in-laws and nechadim in America. It wasn't easy, but I knew it was my time to really live with my heart in the right place that felt like home.
שלי מצא עבודה באמריקה שבה הוא יכול לנסוע הלוך וחזור לארץ. היא מגשימה את החלום לחיות ולעבוד בירושלים, והיא מאושרת, ויום אחד אני מקווה שיהיה לה גם תערוכה במוזיאון ישראל, שישלים את כל המעגל של העלייה המוצלחת שלנו.
I feel the art is the purest, my thoughts are the clearest, my heart is the lightest. I don't feel that I miss anything. Maybe a car once in a while, but you have wonderful monites here, so it's no problem.